Um, on behalf of NASA, I thank each and every one of you for being here this morning. For those who may be on the West Coast, I empathize with you. I too am on the West Coast for the moment, so I recognize it is a little early. Um, but for everyone else, um, I'm going to try to keep this brief. It is a Friday after all. It's a holiday weekend, so we're going to get into it. So I'm holding this, I'm calling it a webinar because I wanted to help orient you all, my reviewers, to Space Grant, kind of set some expectations for how I would like for you to work through your proposals in preparation for the panel in a couple of weeks' time. All right, let's get started. All right, so this is going to be recorded. That way, for those who are unable to attend, they will be able to watch this later on and get the information. And these slides will be shared with all of the panelists after this meeting concludes. So no worries, you'll be able to get this. Tamara, has the recording started? Is that a yes? Perfect. All right. I think I'm supposed to do my PSA. If you have any concerns about being recorded, this recording will be used for NASA internal purposes only. If you have any concerns about being recorded and this audio being shared, please leave the meeting at this moment. All right, now that I've done my PSA, let's get into this. So I appreciate if everyone would keep their microphones on mute until, unless you do have a question. You can also type questions into the chat box. And if you do have any questions, you can reach out to me um, via this email address, which is S as in Sam, G as in Gary, C as in Charlie, F as in Frank, and P as in Paul at NASA, NASAPRS.com. All right. So today's webinar is fairly broken up into four sections. I'm going to give you a brief overview to what Space Grant is, walk through the solicitation at a really high level so that you understand why we're doing this, what is it we're trying to accomplish, and how are these proposals being evaluated. Spend a couple minutes talking about strengths and weaknesses and just some tips to remember. Before I get too far into this, I'd like to introduce my right hand woman, Dr. Sonia Green. Please say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all and looking forward to working with you as we go through this review process in this panel. So thanks, Erica, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Sonia. All right, let's get back to this presentation. All right, so I'm going to go through a few slides to kind of orient you, especially those who are not NASA or haven't reviewed for Space Grant in the past, what exactly Space Grant is. So to paint the bigger picture, so within the Office of STEM Engagement at NASA, there's a strategy for how we do STEM engagement. And the vision of the office is to immerse students in NASA's work, enhance STEM literacy, and inspire the next generation of explorers. And we do this by engaging students directly with NASA's missions. So we have three primary strategic goals. We want to create unique opportunities for a diverse set of students to contribute to NASA. We want to help build the next generation of STEM workforce and STEM practitioners. And last, we want to attract a diverse group of students to STEM by giving them authentic experiences with NASA's mission and work. So I think his, as you'll see in the next few slides, really sits at a nice intersection between a number of these um, strategic goals and how we envision this moving forward. So the Office of Engagement has four major programs. There's Space Grant, there's EPSCoR, which is the established program to stimulate competitive research. And EPSCoR is available in 28 states out of the 50 and two territories. We have MURIT, which is a minority university research and education project, and it is governed by executive orders from the White House, and it operates within, the MSI community. So they do awards for HBCUs, which are historically black colleges, tribal colleges. We also have Hispanic serving, Asian American serving, Native American serving, and yes, and predominantly black institutions. So that's where Europe focuses on. Then we have Next Gen STEM, which is stands for Next Generation STEM, and it creates K-12 and informal education opportunities and activities that align back to NASA's missions. So Space Grant is the largest program within the Office of STEM Engagement's portfolio, and NASA was directed by Congress to create this program, and it was established in 1989. Congress wanted a program that had grantees in every state, so all 50 states and two territories being District of Columbia and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. We issue cooperative agreements to every state. We call them consortium, and I'll get into what that is a little bit later. And this program has been around for over 30 years. It's one of the longest serving programs within NASA's grant portfolio. So Space Grant supports and enhances science and engineering curriculum education by targeting faculty, university students, as well as K-12 networks and informal partners such as science centers, discovery centers, libraries, museums, etc. So Space Grant also supports what we'll call regional and national scale projects. And a lot of times those opportunities are hands-on activities for students to do, such as high altitude ballooning, sounding rockets, aircraft, and space satellites. A number of consortia are well regarded in the CubeSat community. Ultimately, all of this is to help bolster America's STEM pipeline in creating the next generation of aerospace trained practitioners and support personnel. So you hear me say support personnel because Congress didn't just define this to be traditional STEM. Congress recognized that there are all types of additional skills that you need in order to have a robust aerospace industry. That includes educators, policy, law, space law. We also have communications. So we have a broad set of areas that all fall under Space Grant. So as I mentioned, Space Grant has 52 different grantees. We call these lead institutions. These are the universities and or nonprofit institutions that NASA has an award with. So this is an eye chart, but I wanted to kind of put this up here and show you. By and large, 90% of the lead institutions are they are the large public university within that state. There are some instances where they are private, of course, but by and large, I would say easily 85% of the lead institutions represented here are the flagship institutions of their states and their public 4-year. We do have a few states that are managed by nonprofit institutions, and we do have a few states that are managed by private colleges. Um, the criteria of a little factoid back in the day when this program was first created. The schools that became the lead institutions were the schools who had strong engineering programs. So you will see a good chunk of these schools are considered R1 institutions, and a number of the rest of them are considered R2, according to Carnegie Mellon classification of higher education institutions. So Space Grant really sits at a really nice intersection between what NASA's priorities are as it relates to the STEM engagement strategic goals, what the NASA centers are. So there are 10 NASA centers spread across the country, and NASA's mission directorates. I really should update this slide because now NASA has 5 different mission directorates, but um, I will have to work on making sure I update that soon. But each of the there used to be 4 mission directors have very clear what we call swim lanes as to what they focus on. We have aeronautics, we have human exploration, which has split into 2 separate directorates. One that's really focused on our continued presence in space. That's the space operations mission directorate. And then we have the exploration side of that, which is what we're doing to um, move us to these um, out of or off Earth um, destinations. We have the Science Mission Directorate and Space Technology. Then we have Every state, you heard me say there are 52. Every state has this different needs. They have STEM education needs, they have workforce development needs, and they also have economic drivers that make each state's implementation of Space Grant slightly different. So Space Grant sits at that intersection between what the national agency needs are with the state and local needs, representative of these states. So that intersection between the two really is where Space Grant sits and tries to um, contribute not only to the high level agency goals, but it also makes great strides in meeting and addressing needs within their states. So the objectives of Space Grant, specifically to improve America's aerospace technologies and advance American leadership by funding education, research, and informal education projects through a network of university-based space grant consortia. Consortia is the collective, all 52 or more than three, and consortium is each individual state. So we do that through 6 different objectives. We want to provide a strong education base from elementary to secondary levels by preparing teachers. Then we want to contribute to the technological progress of the NASA's missions. That's a really fancy way of saying we want to make sure all the work that the consortia do are aligned directly to NASA's missions. We've obviously established, but we maintain this national network of these universities and nonprofits that are working towards these common goals. We also encourage interdisciplinary training, research, and public service programs. And lastly, we recruit and train U.S. citizens, especially underrepresented minorities, women, people with disabilities, for careers in aerospace, um, practitioners, as well as enablers. All right, so as I mentioned before, there's broad alignment. So all of these projects, and this is something as you read through these proposals, they're required to tell us explicitly, not implicitly, how their proposals actually align back to NASA's work. They should be able to map how what they're proposing will further the goals and guides and objectives of each of NASA's missions. I want to stop. Are there any questions?
No
Okay,
questions in the chat at this time.
thanks. All right, so as I mentioned, Space Grant does a lot of different things, but when we talk about these authentic, experiential, hands-on activities, Space Grant really does lead the way in performing national and regional scale projects. We have Colorado Space Grant Consortium, which has Rock On and RockSat. They leverage Wallops Flight Facility, which is located on the eastern shore of Virginia. Students get to launch sounding rockets as well as CubeSats. So these students go through a very intense, condensed full scale flight project. Valuable experience for those students who really are into instrumentation, engineering. You don't get any better. They really are putting stuff up. Then we have the high altitude student platform. So this is called HASP, and this is run by the Louisiana Space Grant Consortium. They bring together primarily 2-year and community colleges from across the country to to go to Fort Sumner and fly high altitude balloons and take instruments. So again, they're getting these hands-on experiences and doing flight projects. We have First Nations Launch, which is run by the that is actually the Wisconsin Space Grants Consortium, and that is the only program we have in the in Space Grant that deals specifically with students from Native American servant institutions and tribal colleges and universities, and they come together and they launch their own sounding rockets. Then we had a space law program, which is run by the Nebraska Space Grant Consortium. There are a handful of schools across the country that do space law. So this program really brought together those students together as a cohort to provide additional training and mentorship with NASA's legal community focused on space law. And then we also have other programs that are more small on regional scales. So Space Grant has a lot of experience in doing hands-on activities. One thing I don't have it up here because it's not an ongoing project, but the 2017 eclipse, the Great American Eclipse in 2017. If you turned on any of the news channels, you probably saw um, students or a faculty member from Montana State University, Dr. Angela Desjardins. She is actually my director in Montana. So Montana Space Grant leads the Office of STEM Engagement's engagement in Eclipse programs, not only in 2017, but she'll be also heading up the eclipses that are coming in 2023 and 2024. So that project, they worked with every state in the country to get students to do instruments, projects, as well as outreach as this eclipse went across the country. The consortia, every consortium was engaged in that activity. And so we designate Montana Space Grant as our Eclipse ambassador um, to the scientific world. All right, so now I'm going to transition into what kids really is focused on. So I keep calling it kids. I guess just to spell what that means. So kids stands for K-12 Inclusiveness and Diversity in STEM. Um, I will say Space Grant Kids really is trying to expand the reach of individual consortium to collaborate regionally on efforts that support middle and high school student participation. And we want them to focus on hands-on NASA-aligned STEM activities. Now, you heard me just say middle and high school, even though I said it's K-12. And I'll tell you, the reason we kept it K-12 because it rolls off the tongue a lot better than saying middle high school. And I get to have a cool acronym called KIDS. So that's what it is. It's slightly misnomer in that it's not really targeting K-12, but it is focused on middle and high school. So this announcement, we want to provide faculty and staff and students assistance in executing authentic STEM engagement activities related back to these missions on a regional scale. And I keep harping that because this is a new paradigm for the consortia. Typically, as you heard me talk about some of these projects that are led, that are national, are run by a single institution. We really want to leverage the resources and networks of these consortia together to target these student populations. So we're looking at middle and high school students in both formal and informal environments. But the thing that makes this program unique is that we have instructed them to focus on underrepresented and underserved student populations. Now, kids was a lot of the drivers behind kids was one of the first executive orders that President Joe Biden signed when he first took office that really clearly laid out what his administration's vision for DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, really what that lays out. He lays out a framework and he provides definitions as to what communities he's targeting that he wants to see actual progress in. As an executive agency, which is NASA, we now have to show how we are furthering this administration's goals in this area. So, kids, I think, is a really great project to do just that. So, the goals of kids is to attract diverse populations to traditionally underserved and unrepresented middle and high school students into STEM and equip them with the tools for success in college STEM degree programs leading to STEM careers. So, as I mentioned, this is how Space Grant is going to show to the administration not only NASA leadership, but executive agent, the executive branch, how OSTEM and how this specific program are meeting the needs of this current administration's priorities around DEIA, while also meeting NASA's needs for attracting diverse student populations. Y'all see what I did there? A nice little intersection of multiple things in one great um, solicitation. So we want to enhance the students' STEM identity, skills, and knowledge by engaging them in NASA-based STEM authentic activities. And we want to leverage the consortia's reach across state lines so that they can create exemplars of inclusive approaches to providing these activities. So as I mentioned before, the Office of STEM Engagement has a couple of performance goals related to those high level strategic goals that I spoke about very early on. And that's really about providing opportunities for students to engage with NASA's work. And we also want to provide opportunities to contribute back to the NASA's missions. So again, nice intersection between multiple drivers. So high level, this award, we're looking to spend slightly over $1 million over the next 3 years. We're looking to make 2 to 3 new awards, and each year the maximum budget is $350K. And I suspect that the award type for this award will be a grant versus cooperative agreement. So that's high level. So unlike some, for those of you who have reviewed for other NASA programs, this is a closed solicitation in that only the 52 consortia could apply. I can't tell you how many times we had to reiterate that to the broad public with this. So only one proposal per state can be submitted. That does not limit a state from partnering on multiple proposals, but a state can only show up as a lead on one. And when I say lead, we introduce a new term called a lead consortium because we are requiring that the proposal have at least three states, including the proposing state. So we introduced this term called the lead consortium because that is the consortium that NASA will have its award with. And then they will work with their two partners, their two plus partners, in executing the award. So I think I just kind of said that. And so that's really what makes this particular solicitation unique is that we are requiring that they work across state lines. And the goal of that is there are some commonalities geographically, but also socioeconomically that we felt like if we just constrained them to state borders, you lose some of the synergies that could be had. So we wanted them to have flexibility to create regions that made sense to them. You'll see we have proposals from a couple of states that are not even part of the contiguous US. So for them, they really had to get creative about how they partnered on a regional scale to meet the needs of this solicitation. So the proposal is fairly basic. We have Inspire's cover pages. So for those of you who have logged on to Inspire's, I'm going to take a break as soon as I get through this section and turn it over to Ms. Tamara Ross to just kind of walk you all through what you should be seeing or should see when you log into Inspires for the first time. But there's a set of pages that we call Inspire's cover pages. Um, that are not evaluated. I'll just put that out there. We do not evaluate cover pages. The body of proposal is really where we get into the meat of the proposal. Then we have a number of appendices, and some of the appendices will be evaluated, some of them will not. So we have a budget table and justification, milestones. We have CVs for the principal investigator and key staff. We have current and pending support. Those are not evaluated. Those are required to make award. Letters of support. Letters of support are not directly evaluated, but they can be used to provide um, enforcement or reinforcement of findings. And we also have an initial evaluation plan. This is also something else that we're doing differently in Space Grant. We're requiring that they start out with an evaluation plan in mind so they can at the end of these awards say how successful they were in meeting their proposed objectives. And then there's assurances of compliance, which is again required for, not evaluated, but is required for award. So there's some budget guidelines and requirements that we spelled out in the proposal. So, really high level, they need to be very clear about what their university overhead rates are. Um, these awards should be will be given to the lead institution, the lead consortium, and then their partners will be subawards from that institution. Each subaward, because they know what these budgets are, have to provide details and documentation to support these. They cannot use this for in any foreign sources and et cetera, et cetera. Um, they cannot go on foreign travel with this award since this is really focused on the US. They have to be clear about what their key personnel roles are in division of labor. And, if they do propose cost sharing, Space Grant also usually requires cost share. This award does not require cost share. However, if they do propose it, we obviously will accept it, but it will not be used as an evaluative criteria. So we require that they use a standard Space Grant template for their budget, and that's to help us quickly go through and see roughly where their funding is allocated. We did require that they spend no more than 25% of their award on administrative costs. You may be wondering what administrative costs are. You see over here to the right, I have a screenshot of that budget template that is provided in the appendix under EONS. We define administrative, and this is also in the FAQ for those who have actually looked at the FAQ associated with this appendix. We defined we define administrative costs to be sections A through G of this funding template. So that is personnel, fringe, equipment, materials, services, and domestic travel. So those five categories comprise administrative cost. Everything that starts, I'm sorry, in section G and down are considered direct um, project activities, but the A through E should be no more than 25%. Um, and of course, every proposer has to follow 2 CFR 200, aka Uniform Guidance for Grantees and Cooperative Agreement Holders. So I wanted to bring your attention to a couple of red flags. So as you read through these proposals and you look at budgets, these are things you definitely should make note of. If they omit key labor personnel, I've things you see italicized are things we've come across before. So I want you to know these are not just theoretical. Um, lack of alignment between the budget narrative and the budget spreadsheet and the intent of the solicitation. So you should be able to look at their proposed work, their budget should be supportive of what their objectives are, and there should be clear alignment between the two. You should not see a cost for a thing and not understand how it actually contributes to the execution of the award. So budget items that are not reasonable. Um, for instance, they should not be dumping or keeping all of the money at the lead consortium, for instance. The money has to go out to their partners. Um, we want to pay attention to lack of subaward, subcontract information. If that information isn't present, we really would like for you all to flag that because that is information we will have to go back to the proposer if they are selected to get before award because it will be held up. And if they request any equipment over $5,000, they are required to provide quotes, and they also have to adhere to section 889. I won't go into that, but just know that there are restrictions as to the types of equipment that they can buy from certain foreign entities. All right, so proposal evaluation. We broke proposal evaluation for these into four broad categories. And for those of you who've done NASA reviews before, you'll see they're fairly common. So we have relevance to NASA and intrinsic merit. Both of those are 30% each. So 60% of their evaluation comes from how they show alignment to NASA and what are the actual merits that they're standing upon. We have, and the next two criteria are 20% each. So teaming and management. As I said, this is a regional thing, so we need to have clear idea as to who's doing what roles and responsibilities and how they're going to manage the interactions of all their partners therein. And then budget. We want to make sure that the budget makes sense and it's well maximized to meet the needs of their proposed effort. So the first criteria, relevance to NASA. So 30%. We want to show how they clearly and adequately define, are they using state of the art literature for proposed research? And how will that project either enhance or extend or break the status quo in addressing national STEM workforce needs? So they should be able to articulate what the needs are and how they're going to address those. Show clear alignment to NASA's mission directorate by leveraging some existing middle and high school resources already developed. Every mission directorate has some K-12 resources, and all the proposers had briefings from each mission directorate as well as information provided to them. So they should be very clear on what the missions have, and successful proposals will find ways to integrate that material into their effort versus reinventing the wheel. We want to see how they describe potential collaborations between the project and other NASA activities. So for instance, this is a higher ed program, but maybe there are linkages with MURAP. Maybe there are linkages with Next Gen STEM. These are things that they could bring out in their proposals that strengthen their ties back to NASA. We want to see alignment to federal agency and SG Kids priorities and objectives. And we want to see what their innovative methods or approaches are to deliver um, their proposed work. All right, so now going into intrinsic merit, what are the actual components that make these proposals, where are they standing on? So we want to understand how they are developing a STEM ecosystem that really brings together students, faculty, and NASA, along with indigenous community members and youth development organizations and nonprofits? How are they really reaching the target demographic that we're after? We want to understand and be clear about how are they broadening participation in STEM, or how they hope to contribute to broadening to participation in STEM. I can't say that they are going to change STEM. That's a big, that would be a lot to bite off. But certainly, I want to see how they are proposing to incrementally increase that within their respective areas. We want to understand if they do require professional development for teachers, for pre-college. We want to see how they are, what is their work in that area, and how feasible is it. We want to understand, is their timeline, their milestones, are they reasonable, and do they include solid benchmarks for success? We want to see what their partnerships look like and how they're going to actually enhance each other, um, and how they can build upon this success for future efforts. So, a number of the states, maybe if these ideas are really good, they can continue these by leveraging other funding sources in the future. And we also want to see if they have a diversity, equity, inclusiveness, and accessibility approach to ensure they're reaching the student populations that we're interested in. All right. So on to teaming and management. So again, this is how we have an insight under the hood as to how this thing is really going to operate. So we want to make sure all the key members are identified and understand their roles and responsibilities. We're asking them to provide us a high-level org chart so that we should see clear lines of communication and responsibility. We want to make sure that they have a clear and feasible plan for executing the work that they're proposing. And we want to see a coherent initial evaluation plan. And while I recognize not all of us are evaluators, that's not the ask I'm asking you. What I'm asking you to pay attention to are the potential outcomes and outputs that should be present in these initial evaluation plans. While we're not evaluating how well this evaluation plan is, we are looking to make sure that they have these basic components in their initial evaluation plan, because those who are selected will have an opportunity to revamp and refine their evaluation plan before it is baselined, and then they're held accountable to that. So we're not asking you to be an evaluator, but we are asking you to look at these plans to make sure that they make sense, they're logical, and they actually have measurable out results. And lastly, the last criteria is budget. So we want to make sure that their evaluation plan that they are proposing is well scoped, meaning do they have enough money in the budget to support what they said they're going to do? As I mentioned, the administrative costs, which are sections A through E in the budget table, not the Inspires cover pages, but the budget tables, are not above 25%. We want to make sure that it broadly aligns with the requirements and guidelines. And we want to make sure that this budget justification is in alignment with the work, is in alignment with the actual table. And last, we want to make sure that these are effective use of funds to actually justify the means, and justify the total cost of this award. Are there any questions? I want to stop because, we're getting to the meat of Space Grant Kids. Saya, is there anything in the chat?
I do not see anything in the chat. Oh, yes, I do. Hold on. Yes. The first question was, what is CubeSat?
CubeSats?
I think it says CubeSat, but I think you were saying CubeSat.
Yes. So CubeSats are small microsatellites. Depending on the size, they can be 1 unit, which is basically, think of a Rubik's cube, which is about 6 by 6 inches. Some are even as small as 3 by 3 inches. And they have very basic electronics and sensors on board. Because of their size, um, they're easily manufactured. Students can work on these and actually get these up um, in orbit. So sorry if I ate my words, but CubeSat, CubeSatellits, so Cube satellites.
Thank you, Erica. The next question is, how do we recognize that double dipping is occurring?
Can you repeat that?
How do we recognize that double dipping is occurring?
How do we recognize that?
Double dipping, I'm assuming, um, Yeah, I don't
So
know.
that's
Yeah.
I put that in there because all of these states have base awards with Space Grant already. We want to make sure that, and that's not really something we can expect you all reviewers to notice, but for those of us who are working in the program, we want to make sure that they're not oversubscribing their key personnel. So if on their base award, which we know, let's say my PI is funded at 50% of their time, but they're proposing 60% on this, that means that person is oversubscribed. And we need to go back to them and make sure they clean up their budget numbers to be in alignment because we know the numbers don't match. So we're not, and notice that is not a criteria that you're evaluating. That was a red flag. But I don't expect these PIs have been doing this a long time. I don't expect you'll run across many instances of that. But I just wanted to put that out there that we have seen this in the past. But valid question.
The next question, there's a lot of talk here about research, but initial emphasis was on hands-on opportunities. Is there an intended balance?
I don't expect for you all to run across a lot of research in these awards. When I talked about research, I was setting the stage for the broader space grant program. But this particular solicitation is not focused on research. This solicitation really is focused on the hands-on activities as it relates to these middle and high school students. So I would not expect to see proposals that have a high emphasis on research. They could be proposing, hypothetically, they could propose, let's say we're going to launch, I don't know, 20 CubeSats. So they could have an instrument. So they could be doing research, but it's research in the research is secondary to the actual experience of going through the flight project process at NASA to create, to get something up into orbit. So that's the focus, is the hands-on piece, the research being secondary. But I don't expect people to propose actual research projects for this call.
Okay, thank you, Erica. That's all the questions that are in the chat at this time.
Great. Thank you, Sonia. All right. So overall proposal scoring, I think this is pretty standard across the board. We have excellent all the way down to poor. So excellent, I will say this. I should probably make a clarification. It's a comprehensive and thorough proposal of exceptional merit with one or more significant strengths and no significant weaknesses. I should take off that last sentence. So really, you can have an excellent proposal that has minor weaknesses, but it should not have any significant weaknesses. Then we have very good, and very good is a really strong proposal, and it can have, a couple of weaknesses, but again, no significant weaknesses. Good could have a proposal that has um, can have a single significant weakness. Once you get two or more significant weaknesses, you're falling into the fair and poor categories. Obviously, any proposal that makes it into the poor fair category would not be a competitive proposal. So strengths. So the scoring should be objective, and we want to be clear about what is it they write and um, how does it align to what we're actually evaluating? Did they reference relevant research and pedagogy in writing this? And how well is it described? So again, if the criteria is degree to which the proposed effort cultivates diversity and extends institution access to existing NASA facilities. Maybe a strength looks something like this. The proposal provided a letter of support from the Langley Research Center's African American Employee Research Group in partnership with them to host an on-site tour of their facilities for students, as well as participate in proposers Standing on the Shoulders of Giants lecture series as a part of their collaborative volunteer initiative. The inclusion of in-person NASA facilities is a significant strength. And you obviously see a page reference. So strengths are either significant or minor. So either major or minor strengths. We don't want to see strengths that arrive without an adjective being major or minor. Weaknesses. So these are things that maybe they didn't write. It's a gaping hole, or maybe it's something that's not supported. You know, look at this criteria. Agree to which proposal offers innovative methods, approaches, concept of the project. So the reviewer might write the proposer offer what they call guided to method that reference research from 1873. page reference. That would be an example of um, that would be an example of a start of a weakness. But if it does not implement methods, which is the concept for the project, that doesn't provide enough specificity to be useful. So it's just like the strengths is you want, especially weaknesses, because
Erica, I
feedback
think
is
you're breaking up
is a
just a bit.
you said, can you-
Hey Erica, you're coming in really choppy.
is this coming across better?
No.
No, sometimes you have to turn off your camera on WebEx to help it out.
That
Or if you're on VPN, get off VPN.
I'm already off VPN. Already off VPN, but it's probably
You were fine before, so I'm not sure what happened.
is it better?
No.
No, I don't know. It was in the computer. I have no idea. If
Check your headset.
I can turn off, but I think so let's give it a try.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, much better.
That's better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Apologize for those technical difficulties. So some of the key dates, obviously, we released a proposal, we released a solicitation back in March. Proposals came in on the 31st of May. You all got the assignments, I believe, this past Wednesday. Panel is the 28th of June through the 1st. Go ahead and tell you we're running 2 panels concurrently. So each proposal will have at least 3 reviewers, and you will have those assignments when you log into Inspires. Each criterion will have sections for the feedback for major strengths, minor weaknesses, and major weaknesses. And the last question is an overall proposal rating. Now, this is where I'm going to turn it over to Tamara. Tamara, could you take a few minutes and just orient people to what they should see when they log into Inspires?
Sure. I believe you received an email from the Space Grant. You might have received it from the Space Grant address from Althea Harris or from Inspires. The same email where it contained information on how to join this call also included, if I'm correct, it included information on how to get into Inspires. When you log into your external account, which you all have because I see you're all in Inspires already, I did double check that. When you log into your account, you're going to follow step-by-step instructions. Literally, you go into Inspires, you will access the Space Grant Kids review, then you will be asked to identify your civil servant status. You'll be asked to claim any conflicts of interest, to agree to a non-disclosure agreement, and then you will have access to your proposals. If at any point you have a question, the best line of defense is to contact the Inspires Help Desk. They have background access so they can actually see where you are in the process or log in and walk you through screen by screen to make sure that you get to where you need to be. I don't have that access. Althea nor Beata have that access. We can help, but we will probably call AJ, who is on the call now. He and his team are really, really good at supporting any problems and walking through any problems you guys may have. When you get into the panel review, you will have access to the proposals and you'll have the form that Erica just put on the screen. The evaluation form is to help you prepare for the meeting next week from the 28th through the 1st. You will be reading the proposals and gathering comments that you want to discuss with the team. You're not evaluating the proposal on your own. You are preparing to discuss as a team what you feel are the strengths, weaknesses, and scores for the proposals, based on the criteria that Erica ran through, this in the solicitation. The oh, yeah, she's just a scrolling. Well done, well done. The evaluation form will be just a place for you guys to take notes. Bring it with you to the panel. You guys can, and I'm not exactly sure how the panel is going to run. I would guess, and Erica, you can correct me. There will be some sort of gathering of all of you on the 28th. Erica will probably
Yes.
run through just did you say something, Erica?
Yes, I was agreeing with you. Yes.
Okay, she'll probably run through just to reinforce her presentation today, and for those who were not available to attend today, to run through exactly what it is your responsibilities are, what the desired outcome is, and the expectation is for you guys for the duration of the panel. Beata will tell you how to get from that session to your panels. She'll run through what's in the folders, the files that are available to you to assist you through these workings. You all will have your own forms, the ones that Erica has put on the screen, but there will be proposals, the frequently asked questions, a copy of the solicitation, probably the appendix pulled out, the Space Grant SG Kids appendix pulled out. There will be some reference materials for you that Beata will point out. And then you'll be let go to your 2 different panels. There'll be, I think, maybe 5 or so of you in each panel. As Erica indicated, there are 2 running concurrently. Erica, nor Sonia will be participating in the rooms. I don't think you guys are. I believe any conversation. Are you guys going to be in the rooms, Erica?
I plan on being in the room.
Okay, you do want to be there. Okay.
I do plan on
Well,
being
Erica will be in
room.
rooms. If you have any questions about content or anything, you'll be able to ask Erica because she'll be there. If you please make sure that when you break, or when you break and plan, can you let Beata know via email when you're breaking for the day, for lunch, for the day, if you're going to break and meet later in the evening, and when you plan to start the next day. That's just a way for us to keep track of things if we're not in the room at the same time that you guys take a break. Beata will probably she's going to be monitoring both rooms. So if she comes back to your panel and you're not there and she doesn't know where you guys are, she may wonder. So just make sure that if you guys break for the day or break for lunch, you shoot her an email to let her know. What was I going to say? I wanted to make sure, for the panel, just be prompt. If you're going to be late, let us know in advance, because we want to get started right away to make sure you guys have as much time as possible to complete your discussions, your thorough and lively discussions amongst your peers. And I guess your focus between now and then is just to really prepare as best you can. So read through the solicitation, read through the omnibus, read through the proposals, fill out your forms, and I guess on this 28th, you'll be there with bright eyes and bushy tails. That's all.
Yes.
Is there anything else you need me to cover, Erica?
I think you covered it all, Tamara. Thank
Okay.
you so much for that.
Sure.
I think I saw a question that asked, what time are we looking to get started? So this is an ask I have for you all. Ideally, I'd like to get started between 9 and 10 in the morning on the 28th, but I want to be sensitive if there are people who are on Pacific time. I need to know that soon so that we can set an actual start time. And of course, once you actually get into your individual panels, it is going to be up to the panel chair to run the panel so that if you all have some participants from the West Coast, maybe your panel starts later in the day on the East Coast to accommodate West Coast time schedules. But that's something that, if you can email me at the NASA PRS address, that would be great, just so I can start taking that into account when we set the initial day's start time. We have a decent number of proposals that we believe people can get through in the time allotted. So as you notice, we're starting on a Tuesday, looking to wrap up that Thursday. However, should we not get through all the proposals, Friday will be optional. So I think we can get it done in 3 days. Looking to wrap up before 4 o'clock each afternoon, Eastern time. So, I don't want to keep you here all day. Certainly have breaks for lunch. But yeah, once I know if we have any West Coast people, we can we'll send out an email with the confirmation of the start time on the 28th. All right, I think I'm almost done. I just want to reiterate reviewer confidentiality. Tamara spoke about NDA that you're required to sign as part of being a reviewer. We are going to provide feedback via the panel evaluation form. So the form that you're using to capture your notes prior to the panel start is you're going to see a very similar looking document, and that's going to actually be the formal way we provide feedback to the grantees. So that feedback is going to be scrubbed. It will not have any references to any potential any identifiers of reviewers, and the reviewer names are, not given out at all. Also, just want to reiterate a couple of things. We made assignments so that we can ensure each proposal has at least 3 sets of eyes on it. But the other panelists are more than welcome and encouraged to look at, skim these proposals so that you can also contribute to the discussion that day at panel. Please note that these proposals contain proprietary information and they cannot be shared with anyone. If you print out any hard copies, we don't recommend that, but should you do so, make sure that they are destroyed or disposed of properly once your panel has ended. These are considered strictly confidential and may not be discussed with anyone unless authorized by NASA. So there should be no unauthorized communications related back to the proposers. You also, I believe Tamara said, you have to, before you can get your proposals, you have to certify that you do not have any conflicts of interest with those proposing institutions that you are reviewing. And, again, maintain confidentiality of these proposals as required by the Procurement Integrity Act. So, we want to just ensure that you read each proposal separately. You're not comparing proposal A to proposal B. They are scaled, they are rated individually against the criteria as opposed to each other. We do want to have, to the greatest extent possible, we're human, unbiased comments for each section, and we want to make sure we have enough meat in each criterion to justify the ultimate rating. We want to make sure it's written in a way that someone with a general 8th grade education could understand what it is we're trying to get across. It also is helpful to capture page numbers from the PDF document or section headers when you're writing these weaknesses and strengths. And that's information that goes right into the feedback to the proposers. Don't do anything that could create a conflict of interest if at all possible. Be cognizant of that. And again, we're going to ensure that the proposers receive feedback, both strengths and weaknesses, so that should something like this come along again, they're in a better position to propose. So this, as we're going to share this, but these are hyperlinks to the Omnibus Solicitation EONS, which is the education engagement opportunities for NASA STEM. We have information to the NASA Grants and Cooperative Agreement Manual, or we'll call the GCAM. We have a guidebook for proposers that provides a lot of the requirements for how they write their CVs, et cetera, et cetera. And then I have a link directly to this appendix K, and the FAQ on the Inspire site. So with the last 5 minutes, if there are any questions that I didn't address during the presentation, now is the opportunity. I'm going to stop sharing.
Erica, I think there was a question. I'm not sure if you addressed it, but that said, should our commentary always include reference pages in the proposals?
I think it helps, especially in the panel discussion. You want to be able to bring other people to where you are in the proposal. So yeah, if you can include at least section headers or page references, that will be helpful.
Okay, the next question, you referenced state-of-the-art literature. Are there dates before which we should not consider it state-of-the-art?
One more time, Sonia.
You made a reference to state-of-the-art literature, and the question is, are there dates before that we should not consider it state-of-the-art?
So I think the question is, what am I considering state-of-art approaches? Yes.
I think the question is, teacher, you can come off of mute and articulate your question.
No, my concern is sometimes when I review grants for other organizations, they ask for state of the art, and if they're referencing a document that's more than 10 years old, that's not considered state of the art. So that's what I'm asking.
Okay, I'm tracking with you. I'm not putting that strict of a criteria on this. You know, this is not research. This is certainly in the area of, you know, education, policy, you know, social, um, what do I want to say? I don't want to say social studies, but um, social sciences. So I'm not going to put a hard and fast criteria if they're referencing something that's more than 10 years, because there's some foundational documents that could be more than 10 years old. But certainly looking for approaches that are tied to pedagogy. You know, we want it, or they can tie it to successful implementations with their individual states, and they're looking to expand that type of approach across multiple places. So I'm not going to put a hard and fast criteria. If it's less, you know, more than 10 years old, then it's not state of the art. But it could very well be, you know, state of the art for that particular state. Unfortunately, I think we will all agree that education funding across this country is not standard. So what is state of art in one state may be de rigueur in another state. So I hope that helps, Deidre.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Erica, I
Erica,
think
I'm sorry, go ahead, Sonia.
oh no, I was just letting Erica know that I think she addressed the other questions, the time of the day of the panel. Noted that she's on Pacific time, and that is all of the questions in the chat.
And Erica, I just wanted to jump in. I don't know if maybe I missed you pointing this out, and I'm sure Beata will go over it the morning of the panel, but just keep in mind as you're reviewing, as you're going through the proposals and you're taking your notes and you're preparing for discussion, and most importantly, when you're developing that final panel evaluation document that's going to be presented to the SG Kids team at the end of the panel, that everything that you have can be explained. I know you said to an 8th grade education, but explained and defended by Erica and her team, because when the panel's over, they go to the next level, and there may be questions about, I think that's why page references are helpful, and being very clear and having very well thought out comments and that match the scores that are given. They're going to be held responsible for explaining what's on these evaluation forms, and it's not really easy or fun to have to regroup the panel to answer a question. It could be quite time consuming for you guys, and it's inconvenient once you've moved on with your schedules. So just that's another thing you want to just really hone in on.
Thank you for that reiteration, Tamara.
Sure.
Certainly that's the case. Did I hear someone? iClock shows that we are at the top of the hour. It's now noon East Coast time, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's schedules. So I'll stay on if there are any other questions that you want to chat with me about directly. But for everyone else, I appreciate your time and attention this morning. And I'm really excited about panel in a couple of weeks. I think um, these proposals are going to provide some really intriguing approaches to addressing these challenges. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you all think about those. So without further ado, you all have a great rest of your Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Austin. Thank you.
Absolutely. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Green.